You're working just the way you always have, maybe even better. You're more experienced, handling tasks with ease. Then it starts. Your opinion's no longer relevant. You're always overqualified. Suddenly, you're unemployable. This isn't part of aging, it's ageism. Everyone deserves to age without limits. Let's make it a reality. Ageism. Notice it, challenge it, change it. Search Age Without Limits.
On today's show, I'm speaking to Danielle Sellwood, a pioneering documentary maker. We spoke about redefining ageing in her documentaries. Also, her frustration at the lack of representation of women's stories altogether, particularly in sport and adventure, and her previous life as an international canoeist. But before we hear from her, please follow the podcast, rate it, and you can even share it with your friends. Welcome to Retirement Rebel Life After 60. I'm your host, Siobhan Daniels. Join me on a journey to meet inspiring rebels who've redefined retirement. Together, we'll explore new passions, triumphs over challenges, and discover the vibrant possibilities of life after 60. This is about living boldly, not just aging. So, are you ready to rebel? Last week, I spoke to Valerie Troy. She's an Irish comedy writing accountant who told me about how her comedy about reinvention as you age is really resonating with so many women in their 50s and 60s. If you missed it, you can find it on all podcast platforms and also on my website, retirementrebel.co.uk. My guest on the Retirement Rebel podcast, Life After 60 today, is Danielle Sellwood. She's a pioneering documentary maker who specialises in sports adventure stories, particularly for women and for older women, also the ageing community and disabled community. But she's redefining ageing with a lot of the films that she's making. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have you on the podcast this morning. Thanks so much, Danielle, for agreeing to be here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
How important is it to you, sort of as a person, that women are seen and heard, especially as they're ageing?
I've always been a campaigner without really knowing it. So I started my career as a designer in sportswear, and in some of my jobs, there wasn't even any kit for the women, and I'd be campaigning for that. So I just have this natural campaigning and a sense of justice, and, I hate unfairness. And so I think when people are not being allowed to be visible, and that's women, disabled people, older people, I always kind of want to right that wrong. It's just in me. I can't change who I am. And so I am very purpose-led pretty much in everything that I do.
So you said that you were a designer for sportswear and that there weren't an awful lot of items available for women. How did that make you feel? And why do you think that was?
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of before sportswear was fashionable. So that would be like in the early 90s.
But women were still doing sport then, though.
For sure. But so we were sort of on the heels of a lot of leotard-based stuff, the sort of aftermath of the kind of get fit thing. And so it was very much a kind of like a sort of sexualized version of sportswear. And so some of the brands that I worked for had women on their sponsored women who were competing under their name, but they didn't have kit for them, or they didn't sell the kit that they wore, which was just ridiculous. So I think when I started at one particular brand, the women's wear section was 10% versus 90% for men. Obviously, that has changed enormously. Probably there's more women's wear now. But at that time, I was constantly battling, going, this is ridiculous. Even if we do a small run, we need to offer this to women that are doing sport, whether that's recreational or high-end competitiveness. If we can't get the kit, how can you do the sport to the best of your ability?
I know certain outdoor wear and sportswear companies are actively looking at adapting their garments for older women in particular. Maybe if you're going through the menopause and you feel hot, and the layers and the ventilation you have for clothes, or more pockets, or just being a bit more stretchy for women, that's a good thing. But it's still going on that the garments are not fit for purpose in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I mean, we have moved on enormously from the kind of shrink it and pink it, as they used to call it, whereby they just take a men's garment and make it a bit smaller and make it pink or lilac. I mean, we have moved on enormously.
Shrink it, pink it.
Shrink it, pink it, yeah. And also that active, attractive tagline that was so dominant in the sort of 90s, that women's sport and activities had to be attractive, and that was the onus. And yeah, we fought, a lot of us fought very hard against that. And it's not that people can't be attractive, but that practicalities and consideration on a more serious level of what people actually need to perform or what actually is comfortable to wear, that their needs are considered over whether or not they look sexy in it. That was the big battle then. And certainly, like even the top end athletes were all being encouraged to do like sexy photo shoots, which completely undermined their expertise and their skill and their hard-earned medals or whatever. So that still goes on, but I do think we have moved a long way. And yeah, you're right. The next step really is considering accessibility as well, how disabled people can put garments on easily or adapted to suit their needs. Then there's also, a massive counter thing where we have to really look at the sustainability of sportswear and fashion generally, and making things that are fit for purpose, that are suitable for the end user, then also helps make them sustainable because people will wear them for longer and not just keep getting something new because that didn't quite work, or, constantly upgrading. I think we need to make sure that both things are working in parallel.
You mentioned there, you said the word battle. You battled to get yourself. Did you come up against resistance when you were sort of advocating for women and for women's garments?
I think that the commercial side of it in actual clothing did change as soon as the bits of success happened, and women's sport was getting much more profile, then that did happen. So, it's very much related to money and how much money is being made. That said, we still had the case where in England women's football team, the kids couldn't buy the goalie shirt, for example. Yeah. And there was a big campaign around that, So things have massively improved, but we still have a way to go. But a lot of it is about commercialization. I sort of struggle with that because you don't want it to go so far that everything is a commercial consideration, because obviously I'm massively interested in grassroots sports and everyday people as well as the elite athletes. And we need to make sure that, it doesn't just become about a bland glossiness in elite sport and that's where all the money goes. It needs to go all the way through.
Have you always been a sporty person yourself?
Yes, so as a child, I did gymnastics. So I loved like Nadia Comaneci and that was my era, kind of Olga Corbett. Yeah. So I did gymnastics and I was naturally very sporty. And then my brother got into canoeing, which is not particularly glamorous at all. And then we were going along watching him. And I clearly remember standing on the bank when I was about 11 watching this girl go by and thinking, internally thinking I could do that. And I got into that and ended up representing Great Britain in canoeing. So I was in the British team for the World Championships. And then I got into sort of very long distance racing. So I did the Devizes to Westminster race 3 times, which is 125 miles. So it's like an ultra marathon through the night. And we actually set the women's record, which stood for quite a long time, and the mixed doubles record. So yeah, I've done a lot of sport at a very competitive level. I'm also now just very, very much a recreational athlete. I love all sorts of things. I can pretty much get into anything, but I'm doing some long distance swimming now, and we go surfing, and I go to a triathlon club, but very, very low key. I don't wear a watch anymore. I don't worry about times. I'm a park runner. I'm a recreational sports person now.
How important is sport, especially when you're aging?
Yeah, I've made this film about older female athletes, and it basically says everything that you need to say about the real value of sport, aside from, elite and soft power and gold medals. The real power lies in community and having a sense of purpose and staying active, whatever barriers get in your way. We had a screening of it and a Q&A just recently, and somebody asked me, she was a lot younger than me, she was probably in her 30s, she had been very sporty and she didn't really know where to go with her sport. And I was like, just lose your watch and just get out there, take the pressure off and enjoy it, because that makes it sustainable. If you're hating it because you're trying to beat times and improve all the time, you won't enjoy it to the level that if you see it as a social activity, something for fun, then it will sustain you throughout the aging process. And I think that's why I love grassroots sport. I think from a health point of view, from a community point of view, it is just hugely, hugely important.
The film that you're talking about is younger.
Yeah.
I mean, I read one of the reviews. It's looking forward to getting older. That's what the film sort of is encompassing. And it's sportswomen, older sportswomen. But somebody reviewed it and they said, everyone needs to see this film. How can you sell this film to us? What's it about? And why did you decide that you wanted to make it?
Yeah, I know, that was such a nice review. I mean, I should add that I've only been making films for like 6 years, and that's mainly come out of a sort of sense of frustration that these stories weren't being told. So to get reviews like that and actually have it out there in cinemas is like, overwhelmingly exciting for me. So basically we follow 4 older athletes in their 60s, 70s and 80s, women who still compete in athletics at an international and national level. But each of them are in a different discipline. So one of them's a runner, one of them's a pole vaulter, which is hard to imagine, and a thrower and a race walker. And they're from quite different backgrounds. They're very different people. And we follow their stories through the course of a year while they go to their different events or they go training. But we also interview them. So in the interviews, they talk about their backgrounds and why and what they've been through. And several of them have had serious health issues. So Sue, the pole vaulter, had breast cancer, and she wanted to compete at the World Championships like 2 months later. And she had surgery and she got there, and then she got bowel cancer after that. And she talks about how getting back into her sport at just a very, very low level just gave her that sense of a future and sense of something to aim for and a purpose. So they've all got different challenges. And I think the thing about the film and what it really shows and what people like is it shows that sense of community and that sense of that you don't have to give up. There's so many stories, so much chat around, well, obviously you're getting injured now. That's just your age when you're like in your 50s or even in your 40s. People say it's such a lazy kind of thing to say when, these people are in their 60s, 70s and 80s. Dot, who is 84 in the film, turns 85. She's had a stroke and she's still running. And, we had a guy come to one of our screenings in Kendal, and he was in his early 60s and he'd had a stroke. And he was in tears at the end because he thought he had been thinking he was done with his sport and that he couldn't enjoy it anymore. And he's like, she's 20 years older than me, and she's back out there still doing it. It gives people hope. It shows a brighter future. You don't have to roll over to those negative stereotypes. It's very joyful in that way.
But films like this, they help us shift society's perception of what it is to age, don't they? And that's why it's important.
I worked with Alex Rotas in the very beginning. So Alex Rotas is a photographer who's well known for photographing older athletes. She's a real trailblazer. She's been doing it for 15 years now. I had got to know her, and she was telling me the stories of, these athletes. And that was when I was like, we need to make a film because the pictures are great and they're doing it, she's getting great exhibitions and people are seeing them. But people need to hear the stories behind to understand the full context and to really feel that can apply to them. I think if you see a picture of someone in a Great Britain shirt, however old they are, most people would think that can't be them because they don't know the story behind it. But once all the challenges, they're not superhuman. There's human beings. They're very ordinary people in many ways, but they persevere and they work hard and they love their community, and this is what they do. And we're not saying that everybody needs to compete at a high level. It's about just being part of that and having a sense of focus and realizing that, you don't have to be, you don't have to slump on the sofa and give it all up because you've had a stroke.
Yeah, and I suppose stories like this are actually empowering people to just get up and have a go.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope so. And again, we a couple of the screenings, people have asked us, how I want to get involved now. I had a friend who's in her 50s and she's like, I want to find my tribe so that I've got a tribe going as I go into my 60s and 70s. I want to find that community. I don't know. I mean, for me, it's such an obvious story to tell because they're all amazing women and it is my life. It's kind of what I'm in, is those kind of minority sports stories. But then when you kind of look at the bigger picture, you realize there aren't many of them out there. The overriding stories are not of older people, and they're certainly not of older people doing sport.
It's often a negative portrayal of older people, isn't it, that we see?
Yeah. I mean, it's either negative or it's kind of goes the other way and becomes quite patronizing.
Yes.
So like granny does this, that and the other. And, like it's, nice that she's granny, but that's got nothing to do with the fact that she's doing whatever it is she's doing, or they'll dress them up to look kind of almost jokey and a bit kind of a comedic character.
I'm just going to interrupt for a moment to shamelessly plug my book, Retirement Rebel. It's published by Vertebrate Publishers, and it's my honest account of feeling broken in my 50s and finding my happy place in my mid-60s. I got rid of my home and possessions and hit the road in my motorhome for a roller coaster ride along life's adventures. I want it to help younger women not to fear aging and older women to grab life and run with it. You can purchase a copy in most bookstores and on Amazon. Right, now back to the conversation. One of the reasons that I did this podcast was because I wanted to sort of redefine aging and show empowerment through the stories, allow women to listen to stories of women in their 60s, 70s, 80s and beyond, of them doing the things to say that you can get out there, you can do it, and it'll make positive change about how we see and think. And everything that you're saying now, everything that you're doing, it encompasses all those things that made me want to do this podcast, because I wasn't seeing and hearing from people in everyday life. I was hearing those exceptional stories that were slightly patronizing, and it just got my goat. I was thinking, I want to show that we're living and we're doing, I'm 65 and I've been living a nomadic life and having life's adventure for the last 5 years, which I'm resonating with so many women because I'm inspiring them to have a go. And you with this film are inspiring people in sport to have a go.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that is said often in the film, and I feel myself, like, if you've done something in your life, why would you stop doing it just because you hit 60 or 70? Like, I can't imagine for 1 minute at the age of 59 that in 5 years' time I'm going to think, I'm not going to go surfing anymore because I'm 65. Like, I'm the same person. It's nonsense, Obviously, you might get held up by an injury or whatever.
That.
But yeah. Oh, okay.
I actually stopped doing horse riding, which I'd done for, years ago. I stopped doing that. I got back on a horse 2 years ago, and started horse riding again.
Yeah.
Even simple things like lying down and looking at the clouds and loving the feeling of that. I stopped doing that for 40 odd years. I do that now, and I roll down hills. And so just the simple things in life we need to revisit, don't we?
Yeah, it's that finding the joy in whatever it is for you, like you say, whether it's horse riding or just going camping or whatever it is that gives you joy and a sense of purpose, then, just keep doing it for as long as you want to do it. Yeah, I just find it absolutely baffling. And I suppose, although obviously this is very age related, because the point in the film is that in Masters Athletics, it's in 5-year age groups. So you move up. So as you get older in your age category, obviously your chances of getting medals are lower, but then you move up into the next age group. So in the film, Dot's moving into 85 age group. It means she's the youngest in her age group, which is why the film is called Looking Forward to Getting Older, because it gives them a real progression through life, because it means that you're not on a constant downward trajectory in terms of competing against younger people. You've constantly got that opportunity to be competing against people your age or older or younger, but within a 5-year frame. So it gives you opportunities as you go through life. And I sort of think, God, wouldn't that be great if that applied to all of life? There were these like milestones instead of always pitting ourselves against the younger community.
Yeah, because often that is the thing. Everybody assumes when you get to 60 or 65 or 70, there's this slight feeling of dread. Of the sort of, this is the next phase, so therefore I'm going to be slowing down a little bit. And I found the exact opposite, actually. I just seem to be invigorated and wanting to do crazier things and push myself a little bit more the older I'm getting. And that's why I love seeing all these sports men and women as the sort of 70, 80-year-olds. What were you saying about someone doing pole vaulting?
in the film, we've got Sue Yeomans, who's a pole vaulter. And like really importantly, she didn't take it up till her mid-40s. You know, she had done athletics as a child, and this is a case for quite a few of them, that they had done sport as a youngster. And then like in Sue's case, when she got married, which was probably when she was like 20, she stopped doing stuff till she was in her 40s and she had kids and they wanted to do stuff. And that's quite a common thread. And so she took up pole vaulting in her mid-40s, which in of itself is, most people would think was a little bit wild because pole vaulting is such an extraordinary sport.
And it's at an age when we're all worrying about our bones and we're breaking our bones. And here she is going to great heights, going over a pole.
Yeah, and so Sue in the film is in her late 60s and she's now in her early 70s, and she is, you know, constantly trying to improve and constantly, it's about, for her, it's about a technique and it's about just constantly trying to improve for herself. And then along with that, obviously, you know, you get to compete and see how you are against the world stage or the national stage. But I think a lot of it so much is just having that sense of purpose and something to focus on. And for her, it was about switching off, you know, nothing else, because you have to absolutely focus on pole vault, as you can imagine. You can't really kind of drift off and think about what you're going to have for tea when you're running down the runway with a pole and you're about to leap over, you know, like it completely takes this very focused sport. And for her, that escape into that very focused place is sort of therapeutic because it takes her away from all the other worries that she might have in life. It gives her a break from all of that.
You've been doing screenings of the film all around the country, and what's the response been like?
Honestly, it's been, I mean, we haven't got any marketing budget, and obviously we haven't been able to do a big campaign around it to let people know. So it's been very much word of mouth. And where we've been able to go and do Q&As, and we've got a couple more coming up, we found that we can't get rid of people at the end. You know, people just really want to hang around and talk about it. And one of the screenings we did up in Bowness, it was interesting because the whole audience was female and intergenerational. So you had families coming, you know, all the women of the family coming. So it's appealing to young women, middle-aged women and older women alike, you know, because it gives them all a sense of what we are capable of as women, at whatever age you are, because it is heartwarming. So yeah, the response has been great. The Q&As are just lovely because it's lovely being in the room, watching the film, even though I've watched it obviously hundreds of times and I know it intimately, having edited it. Just feeling the vibe in the room when the film's going on and hearing people kind of exclaim or laugh or, you know, the odd tear that, you know, there's some emotional sections. I love that. It gives me real energy. And I'm not a natural self-promoter. I find it really hard to promote myself. But I feel so strongly about the fact that these women have trusted me with their stories and their stories are so hugely important that I can get up there and I can talk about this film because it's such an important message and it's really touching people and it is changing people's perceptions. And yeah, it genuinely feels important. And so I can overcome my own shyness, if you like, because the message is bigger.
I love the fact that it's intergenerational audiences, because I think the key to changing the perceptions and changing the attitude is getting to the younger generations. And if they can see films like this, and see role models, then surely it will ignite in them the feeling that to age can be a positive thing.
Yeah, and I think also, so yes, for themselves, that as they get older, they don't need to view it as a negative downward spiral once they get past 30. But I think also in terms of how they view older people, you know, that sort of the old jokes about, oh, I'm going to go and see the Wrinklies, or that kind of that we're all over the hill once we get over 50 or 40 even, you know, that. For the people that have got, whose relatives are in this film, you know, obviously that is their gran, their whatever, their teammate that they know who is doing that. And that is an immediate role model for them, someone that they're seeing. And so I guess what we're doing is we're bringing that to everybody else who maybe doesn't have that role model in their family as well. They are role models. Each and every one of them is like, why are you filming me? I'm just ordinary. And I think, but that is what makes it so charming, because they are just lovely, normal people who are just showing us all how to live.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, I think we need to promote it more, that these Masters Games are there so that people know that they can do it. I mean, I didn't know anything about those until recently. And now I'm 65. I'm even thinking, I wonder if there's a category that I can have a go at. And I didn't even know there were walking races. And I'm thinking, do you know what? I might have a look at that.
I know. Honestly, I think the walking is incredible. Like it's true. People do get injured. I get injured running quite a lot. And I've taken to going for longer walks and stuff like that now. I think there is so much that is out there that is just overlooked. Race walking is not fashionable. It became a bit of a joke sport for many years. And it has dropped in popularity. There's no question. It was huge back in the 30s and 40s. You don't have to be going out there marching to race. But this whole thing about as long as, I'm doing the marathon, but as long as I don't walk, I'll be happy. It's nonsense. If you can jog, walk. Or if you walk and you do something, we just want people to get out there and not feel excluded if they, or ashamed if they have to walk. We need to just change this narrative about it all being so competitive. And the vast majority of people out there doing recreational sport are just enjoying it. We're not all going for gold medals in the Olympics, and we kind of need to put that out of our mind and get back to that enjoyment thing. If you're going out there and you don't do anything and you go out and you do a mile walk, that is fantastic. Build on that, I think. And don't worry about what anybody thinks. I think in the film, when you see, and it's something that Alex talks about, the thing that staggered her was seeing these women throwing themselves out with abandon, not worrying as they leaping over poles and doing the long jump, which is incredibly jarring on your joints, not worrying about it, not thinking, can't do it, or I shouldn't be doing it, it's not dignified, or I might injure myself. They don't care because the overriding thing is that they're enjoying themselves, and it's what they want to do. And enjoyment and joy, happiness and community is what it's about. And if as part of that you end up doing some mass participation races along the way, then great. And if you end up going to World Championships, great. But it's about the happiness bit first.
I mean, I did 2 marathons in my 50s. I'd never really run, and I did one at 53 and one when I was 55. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I remember thinking to myself, at the running club, they said to me, as long as you just finish it, don't think about a time. If you put the pressure on yourself to think about a time, you're not going to enjoy it. And to be quite honest, I was just glad I was still alive when I crossed the finish line. But I did it in 5 hours, 2 minutes, and I was pleased with that time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was really pleased with that time.
Well, that is good. That's a really good time. I've done 3. I've done London Marathon 3 times, and I've only once done it. I did it in 4 hours 47 or something the first time, and the second times I can't remember, but they were 5 hours something. I did a bit of a jog walk because I had a minor injury, and when you're on that, I mean, certainly London Marathon is incredible.
Oh, amazing.
If anybody gets the chance to just do that, it is the most. I love that event so much because it brings together, the elite and the everyday and the first timers and everybody all on the same platform. And I absolutely love it for that.
To my relatives, though, it was funny because I was put to start at the elite athletes gate just because of the numbers. Mo Farah was running it, and he obviously started hours before me. But I was going around saying to everybody, of course, I'm starting at the elite athletes gate.
Oh, amazing.
But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being in the atmosphere, being part of the people, and challenging myself with my body as I was aging. But again, after I'd done those, I sort of stopped. And why have I stopped? I don't know. Just because the aging process, I suppose, I've allowed myself to subscribe to that. Oh, maybe you shouldn't be doing now because of your joints.
Well, I mean, there is a lot of noise out there telling you that, right? It's not, I don't think any of us should beat ourselves up because we have been influenced by mass media. I mean, it's a powerful thing, the narrative out there. In small ways, we're all changing. We're trying to change that and challenge that. And, if you can override some of that negativity with small pockets like Alex's work and this film, then that's great. Maybe people will just remember what they saw when they're next confronted with some kind of ageist nonsense.
What's your current project that you're doing now? Because you make a series of films, don't you? What's this one that you're working on now?
Yeah, so this film's called Untethered. it's kind of a next step up for me because it's actually sponsored by the Sky Sports New Focus Fund. So it's a fund for kind of new voices. So it's an amazing opportunity for me to actually have a good budget and support to do this film. It's about Melanie Barrett, who is aiming to be the first blind woman to swim the Channel. So we've been filming her all year, and back in winter when she was getting in an ice barrel, getting used to being cold, and a 6-hour qualification swim that you have to do in under 16-degree water, so swimming for 6 hours. It's a huge challenge, and how she navigates being blind. She is a former Paralympian, so she's an amazing swimmer, but for her, it's about the access. So we have got quite a lot of disability politics in there as well. My daughter is blind, so I have a huge understanding of the barriers and the negative stereotypes that are portrayed very often, and the lack of access very often available. Yeah, it's a really exciting opportunity. And one of the main things about the film, aside the fact it's going to be a great story, is that we're making it accessible. So, and this is the same with younger. We have captions on screen all the time. We have audio description built in. So we have access for people that are visually impaired or blind. We have access for people that are deaf or hard of hearing. We're having BSL on this film, so the British Sign Language audience can enjoy it. So we're prioritizing access. And mainly the idea is that the film is accessible to Melanie herself first and foremost, over and above anybody else. And so it's quite a challenge because we also want to make it commercially enjoyable. So it's getting that balance and being creative. But yeah, it's really exciting. And Mel's like in her late 40s as well and still doing incredible stuff. So I think she's an incredible role model on many different levels.
I mean, we've talked about getting older and role models and like Mel and the disability, the groups of people who still aren't represented, are they? But disabled older people are almost invisible doing anything, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, actually, there's a really lovely thing in the film, and we have a javelin thrower called Linda. Now, I guess she wouldn't consider herself disabled, but she's using a walking stick because she's had various difficulties. And she walks to the start to throw her javelin with her walking stick. She hands it to somebody and she throws the javelin, and then someone hands her back her walking stick. And she says, "I'm just glad to be here. I don't care what I do." And I think that it's such a powerful thing, that she is. It's so important to her that it doesn't matter. She just wants to be there. I love that little moment. And I hope that everybody spots it because, disability and access is very, very overlooked. I mean, even very high profile people like Tanya Gray-Thompson struggle with access.
Yeah.
So you think if she's struggling, then, goodness knows what it's like for people. And yeah, we want to make a difference. And most people probably don't realize that of all of the stuff on TV, audio description for blind and visually impaired people is only available on maybe a third, if that, of the programming that goes out. Now, can you imagine any other group being told you can only watch a third of what's on the TV? That's all we're making available to you.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
And also, you don't get to choose. Yeah, you don't get to choose which third. Somebody makes that decision. So, they're going to assume, oh, you're probably old and therefore you want to watch Antiques Roadshow. It's nothing wrong with that, but the point is that you don't get the choice the same as everybody else gets the choice. I really want to raise awareness of these issues because obviously every single output should have access to, attached to it as standard, and we're nowhere near that yet, nowhere near.
What I love is that you are using your filmmaking to carry on fighting for causes, and what you're achieving for older women in particular is incredible. You're empowering them, you're building a sense of community, you're showing that there are people out there who can inspire other people, and you're reaffirming that aging can actually be a positive and you can keep pushing yourself. You don't have to self-limit and you can live life to its fullest, because a lot of people think, it's all well and good if you're healthy, but even if you're not up to full strength with your health, you can still push yourself, can't you? And your films show that.
Yeah, I think, I know I said, why would I give something up, just because I'm 59? But I have to say, even I am looking at these women going, oh, that's great. That means I've got at least another 20 years before I can like even legitimately say, maybe I ought to slow down. You know, like even me with my kind of like dogged determination and I'm not going to roll over type attitude, I'm inspired by these women. Like I said before, and like I said at the beginning of this podcast, you know, I can't help make films that have a purpose to them and want to sort of change stereotypes. It's kind of what I do. I can't help it and I can't stop myself because I have such a strong sense of injustice. That's what drives me. But aside from the kind of injustice, they're just great stories. They're really entertaining. These women they're funny, they're lovely, you want them to be your friends. You know, everybody comes away and they're kind of like, I want to be friends with Dot. You know, they're very likable people and they're likable and they're funny and they're doing great stuff in a very ordinary way. And I think, you know, that's the key to it. They're very relatable, if you like.
Yeah, relatable and authentic. And I think that's what people want to see and want to hear about. There's this obsession with celebrity, and celebrities are the only ones that can sort of get messages across. And actually, for me, seeing somebody walk to the start line with a walking stick, do their discipline, and then get the walking stick to walk away is so powerful. It's so, you know, it makes me feel happy that films like this are being made, that the message is getting out there, because I just was full of frustration when I first retired about, you know, the way society thought about how we were aging, the dialogue that was used about how we were aging, you know, like you were saying, go visit the Wrinklies. All that needs to change, but we need examples of people doing things. We need to be able to see it and to hear it so that we can redefine aging. So I thank you for making films like that, and I hope you carry on making many more films like that.
So I can't stop making films like this because there are so many stories to be told. And as I said, I'm 59. This is only my second. Younger is only my second longer film. This first one that's near an hour, and the next one's proper like hour and 20-minute proper length documentary. I feel like I'm only just getting started in terms of actually making documentaries. You know, I am lucky enough to sort of be getting a little bit of a platform and opportunities, and I am not going to stop for as long as I can imagine, because there's so many stories to be told, and I love it. I love making the documentaries, and these people that I make the documentaries about, you know, they're part of my life now. They are friends. You know, you build relationships, and that's part of, I think, a good documentary, and it shines through that the people, they trust you and they tell the story authentically because they trust you with their story. And I've had it a couple of times where people say, I've never told anyone that before. And that's when I know that I'm doing my job well, because you're getting, you know, honest, authentic stories. It's not been set up. It's not been done as a soundbite. You know, It's genuine and authentic. And I just love it. So I'm not stopping anytime soon. Not in the next 20 years anyway.
I love it. I love that. And because I call myself a retirement rebel, and my book's Retirement Rebel and the podcast's Retirement Rebel, I have to ask you, when was the last time that you did anything rebellious or that you felt like a rebel?
On the one hand, I'm quite low key, but on the other hand, like I've always been a bit of a rebel in a way, because I've taken the less commercial path in life and in work. I've always been involved in minority things that don't get much attention. And in a way, that is a rebellion, you know, like I've never really quite conformed. I've always sort of sat on the edge of things and just done stuff that I want to do because I want to do them. I'm quite driven like that. So I guess many of my friends would probably think I am a bit of a rebel, in as much as I just get on and do what I need to do. And that's not going to change because that's who I am. But I guess, I don't know, carrying on, going surfing, going climbing. I broke my foot last year falling off the climbing wall.
Oh, gosh.
You know, I'm going to get back on the climbing wall this year, this autumn, you know. Yeah, if that's rebellion, then Bring it on.
Yeah. I love to have you in my tribe of retirement rebels, definitely. And thank you so much for being on the podcast and chatting to me and definitely inspiring people and redefining aging, empowering people, building the communities, getting us all together. And that's what I'm about. If anybody wants to see your films, how can they see them? And if they want to follow you and follow what you're doing, how can they get in touch with you?
So I'm on Find It Film on Facebook and on Instagram. The film Younger has its own Instagram channel, which is younger_film. And in terms of it being in cinemas, we have a distributor called Untold Stories with 2 L's. And if you look on there, he has a whole list of where it's on at cinemas. It's, smaller art house cinemas. Yeah, and we're putting everything out on social media as we go. Then we're looking with ways of putting it out there for private screenings and watch parties and that kind of stuff. So if people want to get involved in that, then get in touch.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. A watch party. I think I'll be down for one of those.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been really great.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did with Danielle Sellwood. She really made me feel the positives of ageing and how we need to hear more from people post-60 who are not giving up, who are challenging themselves physically and mentally and saying yes more. She shows in her film Younger how sport does benefit society and how we can keep pushing ourselves to achieve things well beyond the ages that society seems to think we can. I came away from it even more determined to embrace all the phases of my life and empower myself. Next week, I'm talking to Tricia Cusden, who in her mid-60s founded her own makeup company, Look Fabulous Forever. When she was frustrated that there was nothing suitable for older skin types, she went out and created her own. She was fascinating to talk to, especially when she chatted about staying curious as we age and not letting age stop us from striving to achieve new things in our 60s, 70s, 80s and beyond. It'll be available on all podcast platforms. Thank you so much for joining me on today's Retirement Rebel Life After 60. I'm truly grateful for your time and your willingness to embark on this journey with me. If today's conversation sparked something within you, or if you've your own rebel story to share, I'd love to hear from you. Please reach out through our social media channels or email, and let's keep the conversation going. Email us on podcast@retirementrebel.co.uk. And remember, if you found value in our time together today, consider sharing this episode with a friend who might also enjoy and benefit from our Retirement Rebel community. Spreading the word helps us grow and continue to challenge the narrative around life after 60. All of our details can be found on retirementrebel.co.uk. Retirement Rebel Life After 60 is written and hosted by me, Siobhan Daniels, and produced by the incredibly talented Matt Cheney. Join me again next week for another episode. Until then, keep embracing your inner rebel and living life to the fullest. Bye for now.